It was a warm, clear morning on June 15, 1991, in the quiet villages surrounding Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. The people who lived in the shadow of the mighty volcano had grown used to its silent presence. For centuries, Pinatubo had been considered dormant, and many believed it would remain that way forever. But in the weeks leading up to this fateful morning, strange signs had begun to appear. The earth trembled, and plumes of smoke rose ominously from the volcano's summit. The air was thick with the pungent scent of sulfur, and animals grew restless, sensing something the people could not fully understand. Many of the villagers, guided by both fear and intuition, had already begun to leave. Authorities, along with experts from the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, PHIVOLEX, and the United States Geological Survey, USGS, had warned of an imminent eruption. But for some, the warnings came too late. The day before. In the hours before dawn on June 14th, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. The once peaceful mountain had turned hostile. Massive explosions from the volcano sent towering ash clouds into the sky, darkening the heavens and blanketing nearby villages with a thick layer of ash. Lightning crackled within the ash cloud, a terrifying sight as nature unleashed its fury. Beneath the ground, magma was rising fast. Scientists at the Pinatubo Volcano Observatory, stationed nearby, worked frantically to predict the full extent of the disaster. They had been monitoring the growing dome of magma at the summit, and had already witnessed a series of smaller eruptions. But nothing had prepared them for what was coming. By mid-morning on June 15th, the sky over Mount Pinatubo had turned black. Ash, mud, and rock rained down for miles around. The villagers who had chosen to stay behind huddled in their homes, praying for safety. In the evacuation centers, the mood was tense. Everyone could hear the distant rumbling of the earth and feel the tremors beneath their feet. Then, it happened. The cataclysmic eruption that would go down in history as one of the largest volcanic eruptions of the 20th century. At 1:42 p.m., a deafening explosion rocked the landscape. Mount Pinatubo erupted with such force that it sent more than 10 billion tons of magma, ash, and gas skyward, creating a colossal mushroom-shaped cloud that climbed 35 kilometers into the atmosphere. The surrounding countryside was plunged into darkness as ash blotted out the sun and day turned to night. Pyroclastic flows, searing hot avalanches of gas, ash, and rock tore down the mountainside at terrifying speeds, incinerating everything in their path. Rivers of lahar, a deadly mix of volcanic ash and rainwater, poured down the slopes, burying entire villages in thick layers of mud. The lahar flows would continue for months, reshaping the landscape and destroying livelihoods. The sheer power of the eruption was unimaginable. In nearby Clark Air Base, operated by the U.S. Air Force, planes were grounded and structures crumbled under the weight of falling ash. Thousands of military personnel and their families had already been evacuated, but the devastation left behind was severe. Further afield, in Manila, over 90 kilometers away, ashfall dusted the streets, and skies remained clouded for days. In the chaos, survival became an instinct. Many who had stayed in their homes were buried under collapsing roofs, unable to escape the weight of the ash. Others, overwhelmed by the heat and suffocating atmosphere, struggled to breathe. Yet amid the destruction, stories of survival emerged. Families who had fled to evacuation centers found solace in each other's company. Aid workers and volunteers risked their lives to bring supplies to the affected areas, driving through treacherous ash-covered roads. Even in the face of overwhelming loss, the spirit of community remained strong. People banded together to care for the injured, comfort the grieving, and rebuild shattered lives. For the indigenous Ita people, who had lived on the slopes of Mount Pinatubo for generations, the eruption was not just a natural disaster, it was the destruction of their home and way of life. They had always believed in the power of the mountain, referring to it as Apo Namalyari, the great ancestral spirit. Now they were displaced, left to navigate an uncertain future. When the eruption finally subsided, it left a world transformed. Over 847 people lost their lives, many from collapsing buildings and the respiratory effects of inhaling volcanic ash. Thousands more were displaced, their homes and farmland buried under meters of ash and lahar. Globally, the effects of the eruption were felt far beyond the Philippines. The sulfur dioxide released into the atmosphere formed a haze around the Earth. cooling global temperatures by about 0.5 degrees Celsius over the next 2 years. It was a sobering reminder of the interconnectedness of nature and the far-reaching consequences of such powerful natural events. Yet, in the face of such destruction, the resilience of the people shone through. Slowly, the survivors began to rebuild. Evacuated areas were resettled and efforts were made to restore farmland. Over time, Mount Pinatubo, once again silent, loomed over a landscape that had forever changed. But for those who lived through its fury, it would never be forgotten. In the years that followed, Mount Pinatubo became a symbol of both nature's destructive power and the enduring spirit of humanity. Scientists continued to study the eruption, learning invaluable lessons about predicting volcanic activity and the importance of early evacuation efforts. And so, the story of the Mount Pinatubo eruption was not just one of devastation, but also one of survival, resilience, and a deep respect for the power of the Earth.